All right, we're rolling.
Yes, good afternoon. Today's date is September the 1st, 2020, approximately 12:13 in the afternoon. And we're here with the CIP committee, myself, CJ Small as chair. Also, we have District 1 Council Member Fred Richardson, Councilman 4, Council Member John Williams as committee members. And we also have on the line Council President Lavon Manzi. Also with us is Councilwoman Bess Rich, Gina Gregory, and Councilman Joe Daves. I also see that the mayor is on here, along with our city clerk and some of his administration staff that is present. That we do know that our president had introduced something on the agenda a couple weeks ago, and I'd like to yield the floor to him and also to our attorney, or I guess I should start with our attorney, but he can explain it. Then our president come back and give us the nationality of why he presented this to the council. Mr. Aldridge, are you prepared? Ready?
Sure. Yes, sir. The amendment to it's amending the capital improvement plan ordinance, which has been itself modified several times. 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 6 other times. It looks like going back to 2012. And the latest iteration was adopted on July 10th, 2018, which was ordinance 34017. And it was pretty simple at that time, and it just allocated $3 million to each of the 7 council districts to be applied towards miscellaneous capital improvements for a total of $21 million, and then it would just be labeled miscellaneous capital improvements District 1, et cetera, till you got all 7 districts. And then there was a couple other parts that haven't been changed in this new amendment. There was a separate $4 million for municipal buildings and general citywide capital expenses. And then anything over that $25 million would go to other capital improvements that the council might approve. So the change on this is to, on the $3 million, just to give the option to apply the $3 million towards miscellaneous capital improvements or neighborhood revitalization projects. Now, it doesn't say what those projects are. It would just depend on the particular project itself thereafter, but it's just sort of a category. And the budget, looking at it, has got plenty of stuff in it, in the capital budget, I mean, that, you know, I don't know if it's really truly capital, like the money for the football ball game y'all were talking about is in the capital budget. So I don't think we're necessarily locked in to that, but, and some of this could be considered capital depending on what it was, but, so that's really the essence of the change, is just allowing the possibility of that to be applying to something in the lines of neighborhood revitalization projects.
So we can't do that now?
Right now, it's just capital improvements, which is an improvement to a city property.
Unless we want to call capital improvement revitalization. But I see what you're saying. I mean, yeah.
Are you finished, Mr. Aldridge?
Yes, sir.
President Manzi, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, sir. I'd like to start by saying that several years ago, 5, maybe 6 years ago, this same iteration of council members did something bold. We did something unorthodox. we did something that probably no other community had dared to do before. We continued a tax and then allocated resources from that tax directly to CIP, capital improvement projects, and split it up equally amongst all 7 council districts. And I've had the opportunity to participate with the Alabama League, the National League, been on its board of directors. And when I tell other municipal office holders the Mobile story about how we made that bold move and made that transformative move, because as a result of what we did, nearly $150 million worth of capital improvement has taken place here in the city of Mobile. That's something to be proud of. It took boldness to do that then, and my estimation is going to take that same level of boldness to take the next natural evolution of that process, which is to invest now in our neighborhoods. It's just been beat into me that we've got to grow the city. We've got to increase population. And there are certain communities that are less desirable because of the housing stock or because they need infill. Well, we will always have that problem unless the citizens in that community overnight become millionaires and are able to do what they haven't done for themselves, or we invest in specific communities. We're already doing it from a federal level. A lot of our local money goes into investment of this nature. And so all I'm asking for is for the $3 million that's allocated in the legislation for District 2. I want the opportunity to pilot the ability to do neighborhood revitalization. And my goal is to fix these neighborhoods and fix these homes before they get on our council agenda to be torn down, to fix them up so that persons will find a community in my district just as desirable from an aesthetic point of view as maybe some home in West Mobile or some newer home over in Baldwin County. If we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. If we do nothing, nothing from nothing leaves nothing. We can go in and resurface every street and fix every cracked sidewalk and put shiny new playgrounds at every park we have. The housing stock is the issue. And I would like the opportunity to pilot spending some considerable resources in one neighborhood at a time so that we have wholesale uplift in that particular neighborhood. And it's the people's money. The people that we would be investing in, this is their tax resources anyway. And this isn't a new idea. We already do it to a certain degree on a federal level through Jamie Roberts' department. Cities across this country are doing it. Cities across the state are doing it. And I want to plant a flag today that says that not only do we want your sidewalk straight, we want your street to be perfect, we want you to be able to go to a brand new park, but if you meet a criteria, and if your home is at one of those borderline stages where if some infusion could bring it back up, this city will invest in you as well. We've shown we have a heart because we invested in business owners. We just did it. We invested in local business owners who had been hurt and impacted by this pandemic. And so I will be a strong advocate for this change. I'm not asking to spend your CIP money. I'm asking for the ability to program some of the resources allocated to my district to see whether or not we can have impact with a program of this nature. That's pretty well what I would like to say, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. President, I see that we had Mr. Jamie Roberts join us. But what I'm going to do is start with the committee, and ask any statements or comments or questions to our attorney or to the president. And then we'll start from District 1 to District 4, then hit District 5, 6, and 7. Then we'll hear from Mr. Jamie Roberts if you have anything from the administration. Councilman Richardson?
I would just like to say that I agree wholeheartedly with our president. We need to come back and revitalize, and that's exactly what I intend to do in District 1. And I don't need nobody questioning me about, why are we doing that and this, that, and the other. I think we'll have clear in our ordinance that we can revitalize, and along with capital projects. And if I'm not careful, they would go and the administration would come to me with erosion on 3 Mile Creek, anything to spend the money way over there where the citizens can't see it. And I'm not spending a dime for none of that foolishness. Put it in revitalization and uplift these communities. I just want to say I agree with our president.
Mr. Williams?
I just think it's it is certainly a proposal that has merit. I would say that the time for this, we made a promise 4 years ago, and I think we ought to keep it, or 5, 6 years ago. I think we ought to keep it. I really do. When we have completed our revitalization of infrastructure, which is our primary responsibility, then I think that we ought to scrap this ordinance entirely. Let it become another ordinance of the right amount, and consider what to do with those taxes. But I made a promise 6 years ago when I decided that I was going to vote for the extension of the 1 cent sales tax for the first time. And I intend to keep that promise, and that promise was that it would always be capital. And that does not mean that somebody else is wrong. I get sick of national, state, and local politics when someone's right and someone's wrong. It's not that at all. I made a promise. That does not mean that the council made a promise. I made a promise that I would never deviate from this being capital and only capital, and that it would be documented and it would be transparent. So I hear the arguments. I am sympathetic, but I can't go against my word. Lastly, I just want to make sure that everybody understands. Chris started off our attorney with, it's been amended 6 times. I think that probably 5 or 6 of the amendments that he spoke to were simple extensions to the sunset. And I could be wrong, but I don't think I will be. Twice we went back and talked about the provisions on how money could be spent, but that was one time with regard to how it would be spent by the administration, and then we changed it up and took on the citywide projects. But again, I'm committed to the people of District 4 that we're going to stay capital, that the citywide money is going to stay capital, and when this comes up again for extension, I would stay there if I'm part of that vote. Thank you.
All right. District 1 to District 5. Councilman Days.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions or comments.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Rich, District 6.
Thanks. I think it's somewhat philosophical. I hear what Councilman Mansi is saying in regards to it would be under his purview to put this aspect in of utilizing the funds. But I'm a strong supporter of capital for infrastructure, not necessarily things that should be tended to by the private side. And it's not to say that, one district's better than the other. But when you think of capital, you think of something that the city would build and only the city would build, that only the city would repair or maintain. And we have so much citywide, which is why I was such an enthusiast of seeing an equal split, because even though I represent some of the newer part of the town, it's still, you have to still encourage people to invest in their neighborhoods. So you resurface, you put in and fix sidewalks, you do what citizens want you to do, because you're the only entity that is responsible for doing such. And I would want to know the legal understanding of neighborhood revitalization, because I don't think you can put a roof on somebody's house, which might make the house habitable, but who would get the benefit of that? When we demolish, we put liens against properties, or if we repair things on personal property, we put liens against them. We either acquire the property or it goes back into the inventory and we get reimbursed. And then there are the national and federal programs that help for socioeconomic areas on things that, certain areas of town don't qualify for, but we use capital money to invest in those projects and into those changes to help a neighborhood. So I haven't ruled this out, but I just think that we'd have to define what you mean by neighborhood revitalization, and it would have to pass all kinds of muster, I imagine, because certainly you wouldn't want to spend money in something that was not allowed by code or law or whatever, because public dollars have a lot of strings attached on them. And so that's why I just keep thinking that we spend the money to make the parks better, the roads better, the sidewalks better. And then we kind of expect that would encourage other neighborhoods. I don't think it takes necessarily millions of dollars for people to, revitalize their home and make it, unless they've abandoned it. And that's really where the blight comes on. It's abandoned properties. So who are we going to turn those over when we fix those abandoned homes? If the city owns them, I guess we could put it in an inventory, sell it like we do other parcels. But I just think we need a lot of legal guidance on how that money could be expended, and just calling it something to achieve a goal without knowing whether it's actually allowed would be very important before I would keep going on this, pathway.
Well,
that's it.
Ms. Gregory. I'll mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. Just one other note about the various amendments. When the extra penny tax was passed way back many years ago, it was for operations. And then we as a council agreed to extend the tax to be used for capital infrastructure needs. So that was one of the very first amendments to the tax, and how the CIP program came about. We all agreed to split the money 7 ways in order to work on infrastructure. And then, of course, you've heard about some of the other iterations that happened and how we spend the money. Like Mrs. Rich, I would like a lot more information on the legalities of this and understanding how it would be done. Using the money that we agreed as a council to go toward public infrastructure on private properties. I think that's the rub. So if we could get a lot more information, figure this out, and see where it lands. Another way to possibly do this, working with the administration, would be to have more money set aside in the general fund to go to Mr. Roberts' department to work in these neighborhoods. But again, these would be funds that would have many, many restrictions, have to have a lot of qualifications in order to do this kind of work on private properties, as it already is. But if we could find other dollars, perhaps in the general fund, to go to Mr. Roberts' department to then be a part of some of these other programs that have the restrictions and qualifications in place, then that might be something we could look at. But at any rate, I'm just listening today. No specific comments other than that.
Okay, Ms. Gregory. I see that we have Mr. Roberts online. Did you care to say anything or talk, Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, and excuse me. First off, I think this is a good conversation, just talking about affordable housing in general. It's great we're having a conversation. But as far as the logistics of taking general fund or capital fund money, not federal fund money, and put it in affordable housing on private property, there are some logistical issues we're looking at. One is the state law that you can't unduly enrich private citizens. That's probably the biggest threshold requirement that would need to be looked at. The second is potential fair housing issues related to if the council, elected officials in general, are involved in picking and choosing which houses get assistance. There could be some fair housing violations there. And then the inadvertently negatively impacting lower income areas by taking infrastructure funds from those areas. It could theoretically be done with a different funding source, I guess what I'm saying. And we're working on some other plans that would generate some revenue in those realms and get it to affordable housing, but we're not quite ready to talk about them yet.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Richardson, then we come back to you, Mr. Manzi.
Sure.
I just wanted to say that seems to me if we can decide which houses to tear down, we ought to can decide what house to fix up. So what I'm hearing that we can decide on what house to knock down, but we just can't decide on what house to fix. I think that's inconsistent, and I think we can do it too. If we pass a law to say, according to the Zogby Act, we can pass a law to do whatever we think you need to do to carry out our duties and responsibilities. But what I really wanted to comment about was John comment about a point where we just give the CIP money back to the administration. He alluded to something like that. And I just wanted to say from 1997, when I came on the council, until CIP, not one dime of the city tax money had gone to resurface, not the first street in district, not one with city tax money, not one ditch was closed, not one sidewalk fixed in District 1 with city tax money. It wasn't until we got CIP that anything happened inside of the community, and the thought that I would vote to give the money back for the administration to manage it. I wouldn't vote for that. I don't care who was in charge. It has nothing to do with no individual. It has to do with what has happened to that in the past. So I wouldn't be considering anything like that.
Well, I just like to, I've heard the commentary from my colleagues, and Mr. Williams referenced being able to keep his promise. And I just want him to know that he would be able to, because every cent of his resources relative to CIP would go to what he promised his constituents, it would go to. So he would not be breaking or not keeping his promise. Secondly, someone referenced waiting until all of the other capital infrastructure projects are completed and then considering something of this nature. And I just want to ring the alarm that as far as my district is concerned, we have communities that simply cannot wait. If we wait until we do everything that needs to be done in order to start investing from this perspective in certain communities, there will be wholesale neighborhoods in my district totally emaciated. Total. And we might as well call an ace a ace and a spade a spade. There are cities, I've heard commentary about how hard it would be logistically. I've seen this hardworking and ingenuitive staff that we have take what we thought was totally illegal and make it legal from every perspective. And there are cities across this state, this very state, that have gone in this direction and not found themselves opposite any federal, local, or state statute, ordinance, or law. And if we just want to be honest about it, we're already in this business. The city of Mobile is already in this business. Drive through downtown Mobile. Get in your vehicle, fly with your jet, ride with your boat through downtown, my district, and see where city resources have been invested to help make sure that this project or that project was successful. So if we can expend it there, the city gives resources to a local downtown group for them to give facade grants with city money. So this isn't a new idea, but it's a new location. And it's a new geographical area that I'm proposing to spend resources in. I'm not after a dime of any of you all's CIP money. You could spend $3 million making streets of gold out West Mobile if you want to. But I have, I'm burdened. I am burdened by the condition of my neighborhoods, and I see the people in there who have little to nothing. And through this pandemic, they've been hurt the most. And I'm not going to sit on this council any longer and not try to be a voice to do something better for them when I've advocated for all of these other folks to get what they wanted. We write blank checks to this one and that one. But the little guy over here, and I'm not trying to make it a race issue, I'm talking about a fairness issue. The little guy over here trying to hold on to something, trying to keep his grass cut, trying to keep shutters on his house. Well, I'm going to push for this, colleagues, like I've never pushed for something before. And if there's other money in the general fund, that just means there are more houses we can help rehab. I'm all for it. I'm all for $1 million out of general fund. Whatever dollar we're spending to tear down a house, we ought to match it for revitalization. How do we expect the inner city to ever come up? So I'm telling you now, this item not going anywhere. I'm gonna bug you. I'm gonna text you. I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna do what is necessary in order to take care of the people in my district. Now, if anybody else don't want to do it, that's your little red wagon. But I'm gonna do what's on my heart and what I feel is right. It's time for some good trouble, and I'm gonna bring it. That's all I had to say, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Aldridge, I think Councilwoman Rich and also Councilwoman Gregory has some questions, and it's something that you can work on and help to provide to the council.
This ordinance isn't creating the program of whatever it might be, whether it's, fixing up a house or planting a bush or whatever it is. This ordinance is allowing a different use for the capital improvement money. The program hadn't been invented yet. It's going to have to be either administered by the administration or done through giving private funds to or public funds to private individuals is a question of the Alabama Constitution. which I believe is section 94, and generally you are not supposed to do that. However, the council can determine that a public purpose has been met, and which is generally loosely defined as benefiting the general public and health, safety, and welfare. And you do that all the time. Now, but I can't, without knowing exactly what the program is that's going to be defined, it's got to be, you know, that particular thing's got to be researched, determine whether it could fit in that public purpose, and then the council's got to vote on it. Now, the fair housing laws, I'll tell you right now, I don't know anything about them. That'll have to be looked into. What Birmingham does, they are taking funds. They built some kind of sports stadium, and they took some money and gave it to a nonprofit, basically, which administers a neighborhood revitalization project. I don't know if there's such an entity here that's capable of doing that sort of thing. So that's how they did theirs. So it's just going to depend on what the program is, exactly what it looks like down the road, before, you know, you really could say what the answer is.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Mr. Mazin.
I'm absolutely open. The reason that there is no pathway forward as to how it would look and how it would be administered and how it would, who would get this or that. The reason that isn't here is because that hadn't been decided. That hadn't been built. I'm absolutely open to constructing something that we can agree to. But the first step, when I brought this idea to Mr. Arledge, he said, as the ordinance is presently composed, it's not allowed. And so I asked him to create verbiage and add it to the ordinance that would at least allow the idea, and then we can work on building the parameters. So, you know, I've heard some council members say, you know, a lot of questions about the meat on the bones. Well, we got to have some bones first. And he told us the first step was to add this verbiage, and then we can have the subsequent discussion about how we would move forward. And another point I heard was about fair housing and elected officials speak. I don't want to get in the house speaking business. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in creating the conduit that creates the environment to better neighborhoods in my district. And again, this can be just for my district. Anybody else's district that doesn't want to participate, then that's your prerogative. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I would like to say that I like the idea of what Councilman Manzo have brought, but I really do believe that our city really needs a redevelopment authority, a group of people that can go out there and seek, additional funds to bring back into the city. I believe that the city of Birmingham has one, and also the city of New Orleans has one. If you go under New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, they invest in not only the residential areas, but they also invest into, the business area and everything. And I believe that's something that's what the city of Mobile really needs. And I'm really looking to hear more from the administration about, something in that aspect of doing like a redevelopment authority, not just for, District 2 or District 3, but really for all the districts, because we know that we have just about every council member has some bad areas in their district, from except for District 6. But like Gina was, Mobile Terrace to John to Morningside, Joel Daves, and of course Districts 1, 2, and 3. I really, really believe that we need some type of master plan, and I really believe that the best one will be a redevelopment authority. And I would like to really talk more with the administration about really creating one for our city. just before we get ready to end, if does the administration or anyone from the administration would like to speak? If not, I'll turn back into the hands of the council members to the committee members.
I would like to comment. I'm not a committee member, but
One second.
I would like.
Yeah, let
Okay.
me make sure that anybody from the administration. All right, if not, I'll go back to the council members. Ms. Rich.
Thank you. You know, every week we demolish or make structural repairs and it comes through council. I would like a list of the abandoned homes and find out what the city is doing with those abandoned homes. Are we taking over ownership? Is that a way to then say it's property that belongs to the city that should be revitalized? Because when you look at Detente Square, that was a HUD project area. The city took it over and had a very robust program. It's a very successful revitalized neighborhood. So there are tools in place. What is the inventory we have? What is the city doing administratively? And I know they have a lot to do, but every day, every council, we are putting 5 and 6 homes, you know, in that list. And a lot of them are totally vacant and abandoned. Those taxes and those liens are not going to be paid. And we pass something that expedited how quickly the city could then take over title? Remember? That was a couple of years ago now. I don't know how successful it is, but your idea of having this revitalization, that's the tools that we could use. And when we talked about the budget at the last committee meeting about the budget, I had asked for, what is that penny bringing in today? What are the resources? And we were going to, and I think it was Rayla said that she could get that to us a couple of weeks out. So I'm hoping we're going to get that soon, because that would also direct what kind of funding is in place if you're going to set up this program. And we do have to absolutely know that the administration is shoulder to shoulder in working with the council on any initiative, because they're the operators of it. So that would be very important.
Bill, he was listening.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think she wanted to come in. Wait. Ms. Rich, are you finished?
Yes, fine. Thank you.
Raya, did you want to comment or anything? Okay, I just.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. I got to pick on the phone. Yeah, I just wanted to say I have pulled that information, Ms. Rich, and it's about $40 million a year. And I will give you a detail on all of that, which is individualized in the budget. It's
Okay.
what you all approve every time. But I did want to mention something regarding the CIP program that you all discussed. Just like Jamie said, there are some stipulations that we currently have, and I know that you all are saying to do a new revitalization program and to make some detailed changes to it. And that's definitely what we'll need, because currently how it stands, we can't do that, not with capital improvement fund money. Capital improvement fund has a lot more stipulations than the general fund. And certain things that you can do in the general fund, you can't do it through capital improvement. So we would definitely need you all to make those changes that Reverend Manzi and a couple of you all had mentioned in the vitalization program. And he did mention we do have programs now that we can do improvements on buildings, but they're exterior. And as the council person mentioned, not the council, your counselor mentioned, there's certain things you can do that we say that is good for the community, which is the facade or the outside of the program, but not for the inside. So we would have to determine what is included in your revitalization program. We had some problems with discretionary, as giving it to some, and the lawyers told me you can't do for the few that you can't do for the many. So there's a lot of stipulations that's going to have to be included.
All over, Nancy. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Ray.
I'm sorry. I thought I was still on mute.
Okay. So those are just some of the things that we'll have to, that will have to be defined in the revitalization program before we will be able to use them with capital improvement. And I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
Question.
Hello. When that, yeah, it seems like it's coming up. Let's go from Reverend Manzi to Ms. Gregory to Councilman Daves.
Let me, if you don't mind, let me collect my thoughts, Mr. Chair. I need to collect, as Mr. Williams said earlier, I need to collect my thoughts. If you could go to somebody else and I'll be next, please.
Ms. Gregory.
No, I just have a follow-up for Raelia on the 40 million. What was that for, Raelia? What was that about?
That's the approximate income for the last 2 years on the 1 cent gas tax.
Oh, on the 1 cent gas tax?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, not gas tax, the 1 cent increase.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, my head is on something. On the penny that Ms. Rich had asked for the other day. I did get that information. I have not broken down, but it's basically everything that's in the budget. I hadn't broken down the detail of everything that it's used for, but if you look at the capital improvement fund budget, that's it. It's in detail of the expenditures that's in the capital improvement, but I'll put it in another format if that's going to be easier for you to see.
Yeah,
that's breakdown.
That's on top of the 1 cent, the extra 1 cent.
The 1 cent is basically what's going to capital. That's what's going to capital, because one of the latest revisions that you all did have pretty much everything coming to capital.
You finished, Ms. Gregory?
Yeah.
Okay, Councilman Daves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've strayed off course here, because what we were here to talk about was a specific proposal that Councilman Manzi was putting forward, which would allow him to devote some of his CIP funds to address some of these housing issues in his district. For the past few minutes, we've been talking about broader issues of housing challenges across the city. And I would just remind the council that a number of months ago, we appointed a blue ribbon housing commission to study all of this and to report back to us. So my suggestion would be, let's get the commission going and have them do it. There are a bunch of subject matter experts on there. And before we go running off on our own with all these initiatives, let's hear from the people we appointed to advise us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Daves, Mr. Manzi.
I simply want to say that we can do all that everyone has just said and still move forward with my ordinance. If it's the council's intention and volition to create a redevelopment authority, do it. If we know why the Blue Ribbon Commission hadn't been meeting, Joe. We know why all of the commissions haven't been active, because of this pandemic. But if we want to charge them up and get them going and let them present us with the report, I'm all for it. Do it. We have the ability to do more than one thing at a time, and one part in contingent on another. Like you just said, Mr. Daves, I will repeat your words. We've strayed off from what I'm asking for. I have an ordinance on the agenda that would give the ability for my district, some of its resources as relates to CIP, to be used for neighborhood revitalization. That has nothing to do with us moving forward with a redevelopment authority. I'm all for that. It doesn't have nothing to do with getting the Blue Ribbon Commission going or coming. I'm all for that. What I'm asking you all to do is to allow me and allow the communities in my district to have a chance to invest in our inner city in a way that we've never invested before, and to invest in our citizens in a way that we've never invested before. We can build the parameters, we can build the safeguards, we can make certain that it passes muster from a legal perspective. But the first step before we can take the 1,000-mile journey is to get the ordinance amended.
I have a
so-
question.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say,
Wait, Mr. Days, it's going to be Mr. Richardson, Ms. Rich, and then you, Mr. Days. Mr. Richardson, you have raised your hand?
Yes, yes. I just heard from Aurelia that the penny is generating 40 million. According to the ordinance we passed, all funds generated by the penny should be directed by this council. When we started out, it was 32 million generated, and we programmed 32 million. This time around, it ought to be 7 million for each council member, and then we program the other 5. The council took charge of the penny, and we programmed every dime of the penny. I had no idea that the penny had grown that much. I have all kind of issues in my district that I need to address. I think because what we're saying, we're giving 8 million to the mayor to do with what he wants. The mayor vetoed the penny. We wouldn't have nothing if we had gone down that route. The council, go read the original ordinance, which where the council took control of the entire penny. We're just not using all the resources that the penny is generating. We need to reprogram all of that money generated by the penny.
You finished, Mr. Richardson?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Aurelia had a comment that she wanted to make. Then we'll go to Ms. Rich, then to Mr. Davis. Ms. Aurelia?
Can you hear me?
You calling me?
Okay. Okay, on the penny that's generated, you have certain expenditures that have to be made in the capital improvement fund. We have to deduct debt, and that's something that the council has approved when we enter those ordinances to pay debt for those multiple years. We have, we have things like that. It's about $20-something million. So we can't take everything that goes in. Well, I guess you can, but if you take everything that goes into capital improvement fund and allocate it to your districts, then there's no funding for debt. There's no, so I'm just saying, and it's detailed.
We got 68 million. We got 60 million in reserve. No such thing as that.
Okay. Just making a comment, but the detail is on the, you all do everything that's expended out of the capital improvement fund is included in the capital improvement fund in detail, and you all do approve that each year when you do the capital improvement fund budget. There's nothing that's in there in bulk other than the $4 million that you all have allocated as a council that goes in there in bulk. Everything else is in detail so that you can see exactly where it's going. And that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Thank you, Rayla. If I remember correctly, in past years, there was 0.75% of sales tax that was allocated to capital. We oftentimes, unfortunately, took that 0.75% of the tax and moved it over to operate. That's how we became so thin in trying to maintain our capital infrastructure. So the extra penny, it was when it was projected, it was 32 million. Fred's correct, and that was back in 2012. I think it went back to, if I'm not mistaken. And then the idea of splitting it out was something that the council then made the changes over the years to the language, but the 40 million, is that indeed the extra penny, or is that including all of the sales tax that's generated to go towards capital improvements? Because that's the issue at hand. Like go.
I'm sorry. The 40 million is everything that goes over to capital. So that's basically, I think, and I was trying to pull my budget real quick, and I'm overlooking it, but I know you all have a copy of it somewhere.
Yeah.
But the 40 million is everything. It's not any additional funds, and I wish I could pull it quicker than I'm pulling it. Okay, the city's budget is 69 million this year, and that's because it has the 13 million in the transfers and the 6 million
Right.
from convention center to help to make these capital improvement budgets. Once
Right.
we pay the debt, there's only 46 million. 21 million goes to the districts, 4 million goes to the other. So and then you see those other little small amounts on here for other major expenditures. Some of the largest ones are like the Tyler system, but that's really, it only gives us about 2 to 3 million to do discretionary kind of spending, which is like equipment to the departments and different things like that. There really isn't, if you look at the budget, there really isn't a lot of money that's left after, the normal expenditures to do what has to be done. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Just to look at it, there's only 36 million in 2021 in sales tax, period. That goes to the capital budget.
Right. No, I understand, because we did take reserve this year for the first time, and
Yes.
and we've always moved money around, but it normally went to operations. This administration has been excellent in trying to make sure we had capital funds, and then isolating the extra penny made that trackable for each council member too. But I guess
And-
when
and that's what
when we get the list, I think it will clarify that it's an extra penny, but it has a lot of obligations, is what you're telling us.
There are obligations that are council approved
Right out the
obligations,
chute.
and that's what I'm saying
Yeah.
through your agenda. So there's things that we can't modify, but
Right.
like I say, it's everything is, and I can put it in another format if you want, but everything, if you look at the 2021 budget, everything is detailed as to what money is available and whatever, and you'll see that this budget only has, and that's what I said, about 40 million. There's only 36 million in sales tax in the budget. The total capital budget is only 36 million. It's not over and above a certain amount. That's just it.
So in other words, that's the 5 cents we collect on every trade in this city total.
Now, I'm not sure the allocations of it, but I'm, because I don't do the actual allocation of the funding, but this is what, for net sales tax in
After
FY
you
2021
operate, right.
is only $36 million.
Yeah, after you operate and pay for employees and pay our things that we have to pay annually out of obligation. And then comes, okay.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I'm saying. It's total. That's all that comes. It's not over and above what was already there. It's only 36 million that's allocated in capital improvement for sales taxes.
Right. Even though the pennies are bringing in money, we use it for other things. And that's where, Fred, you might be mistaken that we can now up each of these 3 million to 7 or whatever, because you're thinking that it's double what we said it was bringing in. You've got to look at the entire budget to see where the pennies go.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, thank you, Rayla.
Mr. Chairman, have we gotten off base?
Hold on, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to this Blue Ribbon Commission because unlike what Councilman Manzi says, well, the city council has been meeting virtually for months and months and months. So this argument that there's no reason the Blue Ribbon Commission could meet because of the COVID is nonsense. They could have been meeting for months virtually, just as the city council and other organizations have been meeting for months. The fact is that the city council creates a bunch of boards and commissions and never expects them to do anything. Now, if we're not going to use this Blue Ribbon Commission that we created with great fanfare months ago, we might as well tell them to go home. Otherwise, let's put them to work to look at this issue we're talking about today. The other thing is, the city of Mobile has capital needs outside of what happens in the 7 districts. And we've got to have some money to address those needs. Now, if you go ahead and say we're going to increase the 7 district allocation from 21 million to 42 million, then I'd ask Councilman Richardson to tell me where he's going to take the 20 million from.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Manzi, then Mr. Richardson.
I just say that I'm so glad that my colleague has got a burr in his spur about that Blue Ribbon Commission. I am so glad to see that passion because I didn't see it when we were talking about it. And so I'm glad that he's finally excited. And I'm going to ask the city clerk to reach out to every member of that Blue Ribbon Commission and let's convene the very first meeting and let's make it a meeting that I want to make certain that I'm there, and I request that the finance chair be there as well and any member of the council so that that commission can begin their work. But besides all that, it has nothing to do with what I'm asking for. Absolutely nothing to do. It's a detraction. It's a stumbling block. It's a stalling tactic. I see it, and I'm calling it what it is. That Blue Ribbon Commission gonna come back and tell us, you know what they're gonna tell us? We have a housing stock problem in the city of Mobile. I could be the Blue Ribbon Commission for that result, which is why I'm offering this amendment. And again, it can be germane to just my community. So if you want to keep your promise, if you don't want to go down this road, if this is too tough and this isn't something you're interested in, then don't get interested in it. But as I said, as I ride through my communities, I've been in office 7 years. Some of y'all been in office a whole lot longer than me. And the same neighborhoods look the same way. You got new sidewalks, you got new streets, you may even have made some improvements in your parks. But these neighborhoods and the persons in them are suffering. And then we wonder why people don't want to move in. Same reason you didn't move in. Same reason I didn't move in. I want y'all to take a look at my screen, my screen. What do you call that? The screen say my backdrop. Can you see it besides my bulbous head? Can you see my backdrop? Look for me, Miss Gregory. Look for me, Mr. Small. You know what that is?
Mr. Chairman,
That is Lafayette Heights Park, a brand new park in the city of Mobile. The citizens in that community designed every inch of it. It's got a clock tower and everything. First class community. Beautiful. It's at the apex of Congress and St. Stephen's Road in a 100-year-old community called Lafayette Heights. But on either side of that park would make water run out your eyes. It's this type of neighborhood that I want to be able to make an investment in. Look what the city's already done in beautifying that apex. It would be a continuation of that kind of investment, wholesale uplift of our neighborhoods. That very park and that very community is a prime example.
I got you, Mr. Williams. It's almost an hour. We need to go ahead and conclude. We're going to start with Mr. Richardson. He had raised his hand. Mr. Williams from the committee. Then we're going to go ahead and conclude this meeting. Mr. Richardson.
I was going to say it's time to conclude. So you already on it.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Okay. Well, there are any other recommendation besides the dismissal?
No.
Okay. Well, it's been motion that we conclude this meeting in second. Any other discussion?
No.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Aye.
Thank you.